She stood up from the wheelchair like it was nothing. Like she hadn't spent 15 years convincing me she couldn't walk. Like I hadn't dedicated every moment of my existence to caring for a sister who was never sick. I watched from the doorway of her bedroom at 2 a.m., hidden in the shadows, as Bethany Whitfield stretched her legs, walked to her mirror, and started dancing to music playing softly from her phone. Dancing. My sister, the one I had carried to the bathroom, fed with a spoon, dressed every morning for 15 years, was dancing. Then she picked up her phone and called someone. "Mom, when are we going to end this? I'm tired of pretending. Cora's getting suspicious, and I want to live my life." I couldn't hear my mother's response, but I heard Bethany's laugh. "Fine, fine. A little longer. But she better not find out. She'd lose her mind." Too late. I had already lost it, and I was about to make sure they lost everything else. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, tell me, where are you listening from? Drop your location so I know I'm not alone. I was 14 years old when my childhood ended. Not with a death or a divorce or any of the usual tragedies that mark the end of innocence. Mine ended with a diagnosis. My sister Bethany was 9. She had been complaining of weakness in her legs, difficulty walking, fatigue that seemed to come from nowhere. My mother, Diane Whitfield, took her to doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist. Finally we got an answer. A rare degenerative muscle condition. Progressive. Incurable. Bethany would gradually lose the ability to walk, then to move her arms, then to care for herself in any way. She would need full-time assistance for the rest of her life. I remember my mother crying at the kitchen table, clutching the medical reports like they were a death sentence. "My baby," she sobbed. "My poor baby." I remember my father, Robert, sitting in stunned silence, unable to process what he was hearing. And I remember looking at Bethany, my annoying little sister who stole my clothes and broke my toys and told on me whenever I did something wrong, and feeling something I'd never felt before. Responsibility. "Someone will need to help take care of her," my mother said later that night after Bethany had gone to bed. "The doctors say she'll need constant supervision, physical therapy, medication management, someone to be there every moment." She looked at me. "Cora, you're the oldest. You're responsible. You're good at this sort of thing." I was 14. I didn't know what I was good at yet. I hadn't had time to find out. But I nodded. Because that's what good daughters do. "I'll help," I said. "Whatever Bethany needs." My mother smiled. It was the proudest she'd ever looked at me. "That's my girl." I didn't know then that those 3 words had sealed my fate. That I had just volunteered for a prison sentence that would last 15 years. I didn't know a lot of things. The first year was an adjustment. Bethany's condition progressed, quickly. Within months, she was in a wheelchair full-time. She couldn't walk to the bathroom, couldn't dress herself, couldn't do any of the basic tasks that 9-year-olds take for granted. I learned to lift her, to carry her, to position her in the wheelchair just right so she wouldn't get sores. I learned which medications she took in the morning and which at night. I learned to recognize when she was tired, when she was in pain, when she needed to be moved or adjusted or comforted. School became secondary. My grades dropped. How could I study when I was up 3 times a night checking on Bethany? My friends drifted away. How could I go to sleepovers or parties when my sister needed me? "You're so mature for your age," my teachers would say. So responsible. Responsible. The word followed me like a shadow. My mother handled the public side of Bethany's illness. She started a blog about raising a disabled child. She connected with charities, with support groups, with other parents in similar situations. She posted photos of Bethany looking brave and beautiful, of herself looking exhausted but determined, of our family fighting together. She never posted photos of me. I was just the background, the silent worker, the machinery that kept everything running. My father coped by disappearing. He worked longer hours, took more business trips, found reasons to be anywhere but home. When he was there, he was present but distant, like a guest in his own house, uncomfortable with the situation but unwilling to change it. "Your mother knows best," he'd say whenever I tried to talk to him. "She's handling it." She was handling it by handing it to me. High school was a blur of missed opportunities. I didn't go to prom. Bethany had a bad night, and I couldn't leave her. I didn't apply to out-of-state colleges. How could I leave my sister? I didn't date. Who would want to date a girl whose entire life revolved around caring for someone else? I watched my classmates plan futures, gap years, dream schools, career ambitions, while I planned medication schedules and therapy appointments. "You're such a good sister," everyone said. "Bethany is so lucky to have you." Lucky. I wondered what luck felt like. I had forgotten. My mother made sure the narrative stayed consistent. In her version, we were a family united by adversity. She was the devoted mother who had sacrificed everything for her sick child. Bethany was the brave warrior fighting an invisible battle. And I was the selfless sister, the caretaker, the angel who had given up her youth for love. None of us were villains in her story. We were all heroes. But heroes aren't supposed to feel trapped. Heroes aren't supposed to cry in the shower where no one can hear. Heroes aren't supposed to fantasize about running away and never coming back. I wasn't a hero. I was a prisoner who had forgotten there was a world outside the walls. I tried to leave once. I was 22. I had been accepted to a graduate program in another state. Physical therapy, ironically. I thought I could channel my experience into something meaningful. Turn my prison into a purpose. I told my mother over dinner. "I got into the program," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Full scholarship. I'd start in the fall." My mother set down her fork. Looked at me with those eyes, the ones that could shift from warm to ice in a heartbeat. "And what about Bethany?" I thought. Maybe we could hire someone. Professional caregiver. "The program is only 2 years. Hire someone." She laughed. Not a real laugh, the kind that cuts. "You want me to let a stranger take care of your sister? After everything we've been through?" "Mom, it's not. Do you know what it's like for me? Managing her doctors, her medications, her therapies. Do you know how much I've sacrificed? And now you want to abandon us for some degree." "I'm not abandoning anyone. I just want." "What about what Bethany wants? Have you thought about her? She depends on you, Cora. She loves you. And you want to leave her with a stranger." Bethany was sitting across the table, watching this exchange with wide eyes. Blue eyes. Innocent eyes. "Cora," she said softly, "please don't leave me." 4 words. That's all it took. I withdrew my acceptance the next day. The years blurred together after that. 23. 24. 25. I stopped counting birthdays because they all felt the same. Another year of the same routine. Another year of watching life happen to other people while I stood still. I got a job at a local clinic, administrative work, nothing fancy. Something I could do part-time while still caring for Bethany. The money helped, but it wasn't a career. It was just existence. My mother continued her performance. The blog grew. The charity connections deepened. She became something of a local celebrity. The mother who never gave up, the advocate for disabled children, the voice of hope for families in crisis. No one saw what happened behind closed doors. No one saw me waking up at 3 a.m. because Bethany needed to be repositioned. No one saw me missing work because Bethany had a bad day. No one saw me slowly, quietly, disappearing into a role I never chose. Bethany, meanwhile, seemed to settle into her illness. She was 20 now, a young woman who had spent more than half her life in a wheelchair. She had online friends, hobbies, interests. She painted. She wrote poetry. She seemed happy in her way. But there was something in her eyes sometimes. A flicker of something I couldn't name. Guilt maybe. Or boredom. Or something else entirely. I should have looked closer. I should have asked questions. But I was too tired to see. And too invested in the lie to question it. I met Elliot when I was 28. He was a neurologist at the hospital where I worked. Tall, kind, with a quiet intelligence that drew me in before I even realized it was happening. We started with coffee, then lunch, then dinner, then something that felt dangerously like hope. "Tell me about your family," he said one night over wine at his apartment. I hesitated. I always hesitated with this question. "My sister is disabled. Has been since she was 9. I help take care of her." Help? Well, mostly take care of her. Full-time, basically. He was quiet for a moment. "That's a lot for one person to carry." "I don't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice, Cora." I didn't know what to say to that. The concept of choice felt foreign, like a language I had forgotten how to speak. Elliot didn't push. That's one of the things I loved about him. He asked questions but accepted silence. He offered perspectives but didn't demand agreement. Over the following months, he became the first person who saw me. Not as Bethany's sister, not as the caretaker, not as the responsible one. Just as Cora. Just as myself. "You deserve a life," he said once. Not just an existence. I wanted to believe him. I was starting to believe him. And then he met Bethany. It was my mother's idea. "Bring your boyfriend to Sunday dinner. Let him meet the family. If this is serious, he should know what he's getting into." What he's getting into. Like I came with a warning label. Maybe I did. Elliot was gracious as always. He talked to my parents, complimented my mother's cooking, made small talk with my father about sports and weather and nothing important. But I noticed him watching Bethany. Not staring. Not obviously. Just observing. The way doctors do when something doesn't quite fit. After dinner, Bethany had one of her episodes. Sudden weakness, difficulty breathing, the usual drama. I rushed to help her while my mother called for her medication. Elliot stayed back watching. Later in the car he was quiet. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't want to say something out of line." "Say it." "The disease your sister has. The one in her medical files." I looked it up. The symptoms she displays. They don't quite match. "What do you mean?" "Degenerative muscle conditions have specific patterns. Specific progressions. What I saw tonight. Some things were consistent but others weren't. The way she moved her hands. The way she holds her head. Little things that don't add up. She's had this for 15 years. Maybe her case is different. Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. "I'd like to see her medical records. If that's okay." I felt something cold creep into my chest. "Why?" "'Cause something feels wrong. And if I'm right, you need to know." I didn't sleep that night. Part of me wanted to dismiss Elliot's concerns. He wasn't Bethany's doctor. He'd only met her once. What could he possibly know? But another part, the part that had been buried for 15 years under duty and exhaustion, whispered, "What if? What if the tiredness in Bethany's eyes wasn't from illness, but from performance? What if my mother's dedication wasn't love, but control? What if my entire life had been built on a lie?" I couldn't ask directly. If I was wrong, I'd destroy relationships that had already been strained past recognition. But if I was right, I needed proof. Getting Bethany's medical records was easier than I expected. I was listed as an authorized contact. Of course I managed her care. I called the hospital, requested copies, and picked them up the next day. I brought them to Elliot. He spread them across his desk and studied them for nearly an hour. I watched his face, the slight furrow of his brow, the way his jaw tightened as he read. Finally he looked up. "Cora, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay." "Have you ever actually spoken to Bethany's original diagnosing physician? Met them in person?" I tried to remember. Those early days were blurry. I had been 14, scared, overwhelmed. My mother handled all of that. She took Bethany to specialists. I was at school most of the time. The doctor who signed these reports, Dr. Harold Vance, I looked him up. He lost his license 8 years ago. Medical fraud. He was known for falsifying diagnoses in exchange for payment. The room tilted. "What are you saying?" Elliot chose his words carefully. I'm saying these records show signs of inconsistency. The diagnosis, the progression, the treatment plan. None of it follows standard protocols for this condition. And the doctor who made the diagnosis was a known fraud. You're saying Bethany isn't sick. I'm saying it's possible. But we need more proof. Proof. The word echoed in my head. 15 years of my life. My youth, my dreams, my future. All sacrificed for a lie. I needed to know. Whatever it cost. I installed a camera in Bethany's room. Felt sick doing it. This was my sister. My family. But the doubt had taken root, and I couldn't tear it out without knowing the truth. The camera was small. Hidden in a bookshelf, motion activated. I checked the footage every night after everyone was asleep. For 3 nights, nothing unusual. Bethany sleeping. Bethany watching TV. Bethany living the limited life I had always believed was real. On the 4th night I saw it. 2:17 a.m. Bethany's room. The footage was grainy but clear enough. She sat up in bed. Stretched. Swung her legs over the side. And stood. Not struggled to stand. Not pulled herself up with effort. Just stood. Like it was nothing. Like she'd done it 1,000 times. She walked to her dresser. Opened a drawer. Pulled out clothes. Walked to her closet. My sister, the one who hadn't taken an independent step in 15 years, was walking around her room like a perfectly healthy 24-year-old. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Mom. It's me. I couldn't hear my mother's side. But I heard everything Bethany said. I know. But how much longer? I'm so tired of this. Cora's boyfriend is a doctor. What if he figures it out? I don't care about the money. I want a life. I want to go out, meet people, fall in love. I can't do that from a wheelchair. Fine. But this needs to end soon. I can't keep pretending forever. She hung up. Danced around the room for a few minutes. Actually danced, spinning and swaying to music from her phone. Then she climbed back into bed, arranged herself in her usual sick position and went to sleep. I watched the footage 3 times. Then 5 times. Then 10. Each viewing made it more real. And more devastating. 15 years. I had given 15 years of my life to a lie. My mother had orchestrated it. Bethany had performed it. And I had been the unwitting audience, the unpaid labor. The sacrifice they had both agreed was acceptable. The grief hit first. Then the rage. I didn't confront them immediately. I had learned patience in that house. Learned to wait, to plan, to think before acting. If I was going to destroy 15 years of lies, I was going to do it properly. Elliot helped me gather evidence. More medical records. Financial documents showing the money my mother had received from charities, government assistance, crowdfunding, all based on Bethany's disability. Correspondence between my mother and Dr. Vance from years ago, buried in old email accounts she thought no one would ever find. The picture that emerged was damning. When Bethany was 9, my mother had been struggling. My father's business was failing. They were in debt. Desperate. She had heard about Dr. Vance from a friend, a doctor who would provide diagnoses for a fee. Diagnoses that could unlock disability payments, charity support, community sympathy. She had paid him to declare Bethany disabled. Had trained Bethany to play the part. Had built an entire identity around being the mother of a sick child. And she had used me as free labor. The devoted sister. The caretaker who would sacrifice everything so she didn't have to hire professional help. I had been a tool. An appliance. A means to an end. I compiled everything into a folder. Printed the evidence. Downloaded the video. And I planned a family dinner. I thought we could all eat together, I told my mother. Celebrate Bethany's recovery from that bad spell last month. My mother seemed pleased. That's a lovely idea, Cora. I'll make your father's favorite. Perfect. The dinner was on a Sunday evening. My father sat at the head of the table, looking uncomfortable as always. My mother presided over the meal, performing domesticity like she performed everything else. Bethany was in her wheelchair at her usual spot, pushing food around her plate with studied weakness. And I sat across from them, folder hidden under my chair, waiting for the right moment. Dessert was when I struck. Before we finish, I said, I have something to share. My mother looked up. What is it, dear? I've been doing some research about Bethany's condition. The table went quiet. Bethany's fork paused midway to her mouth. Research? My mother asked carefully. Yes. I had Elliot look at her medical records. He's a neurologist. He noticed some inconsistencies. So I dug deeper. Cora, I don't think this is appropriate dinner conversation. Did you know Dr. Harold Vance lost his license? The doctor who originally diagnosed Bethany. He was convicted of medical fraud. He falsified diagnoses for money. My mother's face didn't change, but her eyes did. A flicker of fear, quickly suppressed. I'm sure there's an explanation. There is. I reached under my chair, pulled out the folder. I found the emails, Mom. Between you and Dr. Vance. Payments, the fake reports, everything. I spread the documents across the table. Bank statements, email printouts, the original fraudulent diagnosis. My father picked up one of the papers. His face went pale. Diane. What is this? It's nothing. Cora is confused. I'm not confused. Pulled out my phone. I'm also not blind. I pressed play on the video. Set the phone in the center of the table. Bethany. Standing. Walking. Dancing. Talking to our mother about ending the act. The room was silent except for my sister's voice on the recording. I can't keep pretending forever. My mother's mask finally cracked. You were spying on her. On your own sister. I was looking for the truth. And I found it. Bethany was crying now. Real tears. The first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in years. Cora, I can explain. Explain what? Explain how you've been able to walk this whole time. How you let me carry you to the bathroom for 15 years when you were perfectly capable of doing it yourself. How you watched me give up college, relationships, a career, my entire life, and you said nothing. Mom made me do it. I was 9 years old. I didn't understand. You're 24 now, Bethany. You understood for at least a decade. You could have told me any time. You chose not to. I turned to my mother. And you. You orchestrated this entire thing. You used your own daughter as a prop to get money, attention, sympathy. And you used me as unpaid labor so you wouldn't have to actually take care of her yourself. Everything I did was for this family. Everything you did was for yourself. You liked being the martyr, the devoted mother, the inspiration. You liked the attention, the donations, the pity. And you didn't care who you destroyed to get it. My father stood up. His hands were shaking. Diane, is this true? All of it. My mother didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. 15 years, my father whispered. 15 years, and you never told me? You didn't want to know, Robert. You were happy to disappear to work and let me handle everything. Don't pretend you're innocent. I didn't know it was fake. I thought my daughter was sick. Would it have mattered? You barely looked at either of them. You were too busy avoiding responsibility to notice anything. They turned on each other. Accusations flying. Years of resentment exploding. I watched for a moment. Then I stood up. I'm done. Everyone stopped. Looked at me. I'm done with this family. With these lies. With all of you. Picked up the folder. Held it up. This is going to the police. Fraud. False documentation. Theft of government benefits. Whatever charges stick, I'll make sure they're filed. Cora, you can't. My mother started. I can. I will. Unless you want to make a deal. What kind of deal? You're going to liquidate everything. The money you got from charities, from disability payments, from crowdfunding. All of it. What's left goes to me. As payment for 15 years of unpaid labor. That's blackmail. That's justice. You stole my life. I'm taking something back. Bethany stood up from her wheelchair. Stood up. In front of everyone. Cora, please. Sorry. I never wanted. You never wanted what? To lie to me every day. To watch me sacrifice everything while you played pretend. To let me believe I was needed when you were perfectly fine. I was scared. Mom said if I told anyone, everything would fall apart. So you chose comfort over truth. You chose the lie over me. That's a choice, Bethany. And choices have consequences. I walked to the door. I'll give you 48 hours. If I don't have a signed agreement transferring the funds, the police get this folder. Open the door. Turn back one last time. 15 years you told me I was needed. That I was important. That I was a good sister. I looked at each of them. Mother. Father. Sister. I was none of those things. I was just convenient. And convenient doesn't live here anymore. I walked out. Elliot was waiting in his car. I got in and he drove us away from that house. Away from 15 years of lies. Away from the family that had used me up and thrown me away. I didn't cry. I was too empty for tears. But I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Decades maybe. Freedom. The aftermath was messy. Messy and satisfying. My mother tried to fight at first. Threatened lawyers, countersuits, claims that I was mentally unstable. But the evidence was overwhelming, and her own lawyer told her she'd lose. She signed the agreement, transferred what was left of the fraudulent funds. Nearly $300,000 accumulated over 15 years of sympathy and lies. It wasn't enough. Nothing could ever be enough to repay what they had taken. But it was something. Bethany tried to contact me several times. Letters, emails, voicemails full of tears and apologies. I was just a kid when it started. Mom manipulated me too. I wanted to tell you so many times. I listened to each one, then deleted them without responding. Maybe someday I would be able to hear her excuses without rage. Maybe someday I could understand the child she had been, separate from the adult she had become. But not yet. Not now. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. My father filed for divorce within 3 months. He said he couldn't live with someone capable of such deception. I think he also couldn't live with the guilt of his own blindness. I didn't blame him exactly. But I didn't forgive him either. He had been there. He had chosen not to see. That was its own kind of crime. Elliot and I moved in together 6 months after the confrontation. He never pushed me to talk about what happened. Never demanded I process or heal or move on faster than I was ready. He just was there. Steady. Present. Real. You're doing amazing, he said once, watching me unpack boxes in our new apartment. I don't feel amazing. I feel like I'm learning to walk again. Like a baby. That's what growth feels like. Awkward and uncertain and completely worth it. Smiled. It was getting easier to smile. I went back to school. Finally. At 29, I enrolled in the physical therapy program I had given up years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent 15 years as an unpaid caregiver. Now I would make it my career, on my terms with my training for people who actually needed help. The first day of classes, I sat in a lecture hall surrounded by students a decade younger than me. I should have felt out of place. Instead, I felt exactly where I was supposed to be. Late maybe. But finally arrived. I graduated 2 years later. Top of my class. Elliot was in the audience. My father was not. My mother and sister were not invited. I had built a new family by then. Friends from school. Colleagues from my clinical rotations. People who knew my story and loved me anyway. At the graduation party, someone asked me to make a toast. I raised my glass. To second chances. To the people who believe in us when we can't believe in ourselves. And to the simple, radical act of choosing our own lives. Everyone drank. Elliot caught my eye across the room and smiled. I was 31 years old. And my life was finally beginning. Last month I got a letter. No return address. But I recognized Bethany's handwriting. Dear Cora, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you have every right to hate me forever. But I needed to write this even if you never read it. Sorry. Those words aren't enough. I know they aren't. But I mean them more than I've ever meant anything. I was 9 when Mom came up with a plan. I didn't understand what I was agreeing to. I just knew she said it would help the family, and I wanted to help. By the time I was old enough to understand, it had been going on for years. I was scared to tell the truth. Scared of what would happen to Mom. Scared of what would happen to me. Scared of you hating me, which happened anyway. I watched you give up everything. I watched you get smaller while I stayed safe in my lie. And I told myself it was okay because I didn't have a choice. But I did have a choice. Every day I had a choice. And every day I chose the lie over you. I'm in therapy now. Trying to understand how I became someone capable of doing what I did. Trying to figure out if there's anything left of me worth saving. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that you were never convenient to me. You were my sister. My hero. The person who took care of me when no one else would. I just wasn't brave enough to deserve you. Hope you're happy. I hope Elliot treats you well. I hope you have the life you should have had all along. And I hope someday, maybe years from now, maybe never, we can talk. Not to fix what I broke, but just to, I don't know, be sisters again. Love you. I always did. Even when I was too weak to show it. Bethany. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. Not in the trash. But not on display either. Somewhere in between. Like my feelings about her. Like the future we might or might not have. Maybe someday I'll respond. When the anger has faded enough to find the hurt underneath. When I can look at my sister and see the 9-year-old who was manipulated. Not just the adult who chose to continue the lie. But that day isn't today. And I'm okay with that. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You pass the same points over and over, but each time from a little higher up. I'm still spiraling. Still healing. Still learning what it means to live a life that's actually mine. But I'm doing it. Finally. After everything. And that's enough for now. If you're out there, the caretaker, the sacrificed one, the person who gave up everything for a family that didn't deserve it, I want you to tell you something. It's not too late. Whatever years you've lost, whatever dreams you've deferred, whatever parts of yourself you've surrendered, they're not gone forever. They're waiting. Buried under obligation and guilt and the lies other people told you about your own worth. You can dig them up. It's hard. Hurts. It means looking at truths you've spent years avoiding. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. Real freedom. The kind that comes from finally choosing yourself. I spent 15 years taking care of a sister who didn't need me. 15 years believing I was essential when I was just convenient. 15 years disappearing into a role someone else had written for me. Now I'm 32. I have a career I love. Partner who sees me. A life I chose. I'm not the caretaker anymore. I'm not the responsible one. I'm not the sacrifice. I'm just Cora. And that's finally enough. The wheelchair is in storage somewhere. Maybe my mother kept it as a prop. Maybe Bethany uses it when she needs sympathy from new people. I don't know and I don't care. What I care about is this. I will never again let someone else define my worth. Never again sacrifice my dreams for someone else's comfort. Never again believe that my value lies only in what I can give. I am not convenient. I am not a tool. I am not a supporting character in someone else's story. I am the main character in mine. And my story is just getting started. If this story satisfies you somewhere deep, then subscribe to Revenge Avenue. The next story might feel as familiar as your own family.